No tomahawks will truly solve this critical issue. This only escalates the entire situation to the point of nuclear war. Probably, Donald Trump understands this better than anyone, as he is in no hurry to hand over this deadly weapon or to allow strikes deep into Russia, as President Zelensky hopes. Washington's actions are currently being carried out both in the broader context of resolving the ongoing regional crisis around Ukraine and in active pursuit of its own strategic interests in Eastern Europe and the world as a whole. Well, that's normal. If the Americans want to resolve the conflict in Ukraine and see some small role for us there, we are ready to participate in that. We have stated our position: peace, peace, and only peace. Ukraine must exist as a sovereign, independent state. We are absolutely in favor of stopping this devastating war now. Otherwise, this truly independent sovereign state will completely cease to exist. All the more so since some are already eyeing the western regions, you know precisely who, the western regions of Ukraine and of Belarus as well, already living by some kind of fervent holy spirit of Piłsudski. He dreams of this powerful spirit, or rather is entirely possessed by it. Well, such foolishness, if that's the case, you should just keep quiet. But that's their issue. That's just the kind of people they are. That's why, for us, a sovereign, independent Ukraine is a major and fundamental issue. It should be truly peaceful, create no problems or threats for anyone else, and develop as a fully independent state. We support this, we are for peace, and in this regard, we are ready to work. My recent meetings with the President of Russia actually clearly show that the Russian leadership, are genuinely focused on establishing peace. No tomahawks will truly solve this critical issue. This only escalates the entire situation to the point of nuclear war. Probably, Donald Trump understands this better than anyone, as he is in no hurry to hand over this deadly weapon or to allow strikes deep into Russia, as President Zelensky hopes. I believe that Belarus, as Russia's closest ally in resolving the Ukrainian crisis and in building the architecture of regional security, is assigned, as I have already said, a certain role. The Americans have noticed us in this process.
I hope that I will have possibility to come to Washington and have a meeting on Friday with President. And of course, I have some more meetings which are also important for me. Some military companies which are important. I want to not to share details about it, and also maybe also some meetings with senators, congressmen. The main topics are air defense and our possibilities with long range to pressure on Russia.
Нанесет ли это ущерб нашим отношениям, в которых наметился какой-то свет в конце туннеля? Конечно, нанесет. Ну а как же? Применять томагавки без прямого участия американских военнослужащих невозможно. Это будет означать абсолютно новый, качественно новый этап эскалации, в том числе в отношениях между Россией и Соединенными Штатами.
This is an attempt at escalation, but if such weapons are used to strike Russian territory, the response will be very serious, if not overwhelming. Let them think about that. As for the economic side, I repeat once again, of course, there is nothing good or pleasant here. But if we look objectively and professionally at this economic side of these sanctions, what do we see? Currently, the USA, I think, produces about 13.5 million barrels per day, holding the first place. Saudi Arabia is in second place with about 10 million, and the Russian Federation is third with about 9.5 million barrels per day. But the USA consumes 20 million. They sell something and buy even more, mainly in Canada. So they produce 13.5 and consume 20, but the Russian Federation and Saudi Arabia sell more oil and oil products. You know, I might be mistaken about something there. On the go, I might mix something up, but approximately the order will be similar to reality. And what is that? Saudi Arabia sells about 9 million tons of oil and petroleum products to external markets. The Russian Federation, 7.5. So our contribution to the global energy balance is very significant.
Very. And now this balance as a whole, in the interest of consumers and in the interest of producers, has been created.
Breaking this balance is a very thankless task, including for those who try to do it. Why? Well, firstly, it must be said that overall production is currently on a plateau. Of course, it is possible to replace some part, certainly not all. That's impossible, but some part of Russian oil and petroleum products on the global market.
But firstly, this requires time. Secondly, it requires significant investments. For the first time, we recently heard from the International Energy Agency that it is encouraging and guiding economic participants to invest in hydrocarbon energy. Until now, it was the opposite. They said, including within the framework of the International Energy Agency, that investments should be made in alternative energy sources. Yes, it is necessary, but it has become clear that hydrocarbons cannot be avoided in the coming years, decades at least. This is obvious due to the growth in consumption. The global economy is growing and the consumption of energy resources is increasing. Well, there you go. It is not possible to sharply increase it at the moment. But if the amount of our oil and oil products on the global market sharply decreases, prices will rise. And my American colleague and I also talked about this. What will this lead to? It will lead to a sharp increase in the cost of oil and oil products, including at gas stations. And the United States is no exception. And if you consider the domestic political calendar in the same states, it is clear how sensitive some processes will be in this regard. And those who suggest such decisions to the current administration, you need to understand who they are working for. But it doesn't matter. What is important for us is that we feel confident and stable, and despite certain losses, which will of course be related to many circumstances, nevertheless, our energy sector feels quite confident. But I hope that this will not lead to serious changes in the global market, although everyone should now think, I agree with the International Energy Agency, about the need to invest in traditional energy, in traditional types of energy. We are doing this and intend to continue. If in the end we move not towards some kind of pressure, but towards a serious conversation about the future, including in the economic sphere, then we have many areas for joint work. We are generally ready for this, but as we see, it depends not only on the Russian Federation, but also on our partners, in this case, the Americans. Thank you.
Please tell me, please, I will ask you a question. TV channel Zvezda, Kovovkishing Pacient Pomos Perinam Bas Kovarshinsky Konstantin, regarding the use of Western long-range weapons, how do you personally assess the obviously contradictory signals coming from Washington? Recently, the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal stated that the USA lifted a key restriction on the use of these weapons. Then Trump stated that Tomahawks would not be supplied after all. And just literally an hour ago, Zelensky again says that Ukraine will receive weapons that will hit almost 3,000 kilometers. In your opinion, is this escalation?
This is an attempt at escalation, but if such weapons are used to strike Russian territory, the response will be very serious, if not overwhelming. But let them think about that.
Lithuania's President Gitanas Nausėda announced as he participated in the EU leaders' summit in Brussels that 2 Russian military aircraft violated his country's airspace on Thursday. The aircraft, identified as an Su-30 fighter jet and Il-78 refueling aircraft, were thought to be executing a training mission when they breached the border. Lithuanian officials say the 2 planes were recorded to have entered Lithuanian airspace around 4 p.m. local time.
I strongly condemn the violation of Lithuanian airspace recently by the fighter jet and transport vehicle transport plane of Russian Federation from Kaliningrad region side. This is cruel violation of international law and territorial sovereignty of Lithuania, and we have to react to this.
The incident comes as European heads of states gather to discuss continental security. Lithuania, a NATO member, has been wary after multiple European countries reported unidentified drone sightings across their skies in recent weeks. Many NATO countries in the region have accused the Kremlin of perpetrating these violations and have vowed to bolster their defenses to counter the threats.
Mr. President, that the sanctions that you're announcing today will push Putin to the...
Well, I don't know that they will. I think that they'll certainly have an impact. They're massive sanctions. It's sanctions on oil. The 2 biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll push... hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. You know, it takes 2 to tango, as they say.
Do you still believe that Putin wants to take all of Ukraine?
I always felt that way. I always felt he wanted to. When I was in my first term, I was I was very close to him, relatively speaking. It was harder because of the Russia hoax. But I would talk to President Putin about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye. I'd say it was the apple of his eye, but it would have never happened. He knew the consequences were too great. When we had a rigged election and all of a sudden I wasn't there, he said, wow. I think he looked at Afghanistan, how horribly that was handled, so stupidly. And I think that really gave him a little additional, incentive. I always felt he wanted the whole thing, not a piece of it. But I think now he's willing to negotiate a little bit further, and I think he's willing to make a deal. We'll see. We don't want him. We don't want him to have the whole thing.
Tensions are escalating fast between the U.S. and Russia. A top Kremlin official, Dmitry Medvedev, says President Donald Trump has committed an act of war after slapping new sanctions on Russia's 2 biggest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, and canceling a planned summit with President Vladimir Putin. The move, announced Wednesday, aims to pressure Moscow to negotiate over Ukraine. Medvedev fired back on Telegram, calling Trump a talkative peacemaker who's now taken the road to war. The UK also sanctioned Russia's oil sector last week, cutting deeper into the Kremlin's war funds. Trump insists he's a peacemaker trying to end the conflict, but critics say this could mark a major turning point in U.S.-Russia relations.
Так называемая современность наших вооруженных сил, вернее, сил ядерного сдерживания находится на самом высоком уровне, наверное, можно без всякого преувеличения сказать, на более высоком уровне находится как минимум всех ядерных государств. Испытание крылатой ракеты неограниченной дальности «Буревестник» с ядерной энергетической установкой. Знаю, что у меня есть доклад и со стороны промышленности, в целом известная и оценка Министерства обороны. Это все-таки уникальное изделие, которого в мире ни у кого нет. И вот сейчас решающие испытания завершены.
Our next story is from Russia. It has tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile and it's making headlines across the world. The missile is called Burevestnik. One expert describes it, and I'm quoting, as a tiny flying Chernobyl. Russian President Putin announced the test himself. Moscow says the missile flew over 14,000 kilometers. It remained airborne for 15 hours and it ran on a miniature nuclear reactor. This means this missile has virtually unlimited range and the ability to dodge even the most powerful missile defenses. Now, this test has delivered 2 objectives for President Putin. He's flexing his military muscle and he's extending an invite for a dialogue. Our next report explains why.
Russia has just tested a new weapon, and this one is unlike anything in the world. It's called the WW3. NATO calls it Skyfall. The name means storm petrel, a bird that flies ahead of storms. It's a fitting description, because this missile signals trouble ahead. President Putin announced the test himself, on camera, in military uniform, flanked by his generals.
Сколько тысяч километров? 14 тысяч. 14 тысяч. И в воздухе находилось? Ну, около 15 часов. И это не предел. Не предел. Да. Нам нужно будет, Валерий Алексеевич, определиться, на что это такое, к какому классу оружия эта новая система относится. Надо определить оружейных сил. Есть.
Russia says the missile stayed in the air for 15 hours. It traveled 8,700 miles. But here's what stands out. The missile Chernobyl was powered by a miniature nuclear reactor. This is what makes the WW3 different. Most missiles rely on conventional fuel. This one runs on nuclear energy. That gives it unlimited range. It can fly for days, circle the globe, and hit targets from unpredictable angles. The engine uses superheated air, blasted out from a reactor. Some call it a tiny flying Chernobyl. That's how a nuclear expert described this weapon.
So this missile is really like a small airplane. It has a jet engine on it. And just like a jet engine uses fuel to burn oxygen, this does exactly the same thing, but it uses a nuclear reactor to burn the oxygen and produce the thrust.
Russia says the missile can evade any defense system, including the Golden Dome, that Trump claimed would make America invincible. But here's the risk. It leaves a radioactive trail in flight, and the longer it flies, the more chance there is of something going wrong. This project has already claimed lives. In 2019, an explosion killed 5 Russian scientists during a test. So why is Russia showing it off now? For Putin, it's a message to the West. His talks with Trump collapsed weeks ago, and this test came right after that. Putin said the weapon is unique, and he's now preparing to deploy it in combat units. He's also offered to extend the New START Treaty, the last remaining nuclear arms agreement with the U.S. So this is a double signal, a show of force, and an open door for talks. But experts are alarmed. Some call Russia's move destabilizing. Others say it's a science fiction nightmare turned real. Because this is what a 21st century arms race looks like. A nuclear missile that never needs to land. That could fly for days and strike from any direction. Russia calls it a shield, but to the West it looks like a threat.